Hi, and welcome to yet another episode of Let's Talk Children's Lit. Today I'm going to be reviewing yet another debut novel by Addie Thorley titled An Affair of Poisons. The title sounds intriguing, doesn't it? Let's take a closer look at the cover. The gold designs are definitely interesting. Additionally, the bloodied plant with a fragile crown on the head represents the unlikely combination of alchemy and royalty, the clash that this book intends to create. So, the synopsis that the book offers is also quite riveting, almost pushing you to pick this up and give it a try. Normally, when people say don't judge a book by its cover, I'm like, that's exactly how you need to judge the book. Honestly, if I think the cover is interesting and amazing, I think the story will be too. However, in this one instance, I don't think the book does credit to the cover. My experience of reading this book was that it was a little bit of a letdown. I got caught up in the cover and the synopsis and the genre. I'm a huge fantasy slash alternate history fan, like wanting to get an alethiometer tattooed on my back kind of fan. And I picked this up and started reading, hoping to enter an interesting, fantastical, historical space. However, as I progressed with the book, I found it harder to continue reading and actually finish it. I know some other reviewers have said that there is a lot of action here, and that's true. There is a lot of action in this book, but that's something that just didn't work for me. The character's dilemma and the action did not align too much. The characters were struggling with something, but they ended up doing something completely different. Secondly, there is way too much hyperbole for my taste. The story is also written in alternating point of view, which I normally appreciate and is quite common in contemporary YA novels. But I think it just didn't work for this book. And I'm going to explain to you why it didn't work in a bit. But this is not to say that you will not enjoy this book at all. There are a lot of good stuff here as well. I will get into that in a bit and explain what seems to work and does not work in this book by looking at the literary devices used, by thinking about the genre and its depiction of one of the most hauntingly dark and gory historical event in the world. But before that, let me give you a quick summary. Okay, so the story revolves around two protagonists, Mirabelle, the genius alchemist daughter of La Voisin, who founded the Shadow Society, a network of fortune tellers and alchemists dedicated to helping the poor in Paris, and Jos de Bourbon, the bastard son of the Sun King, King Louis XIV. The story begins with Mirabelle unwittingly brewing a poison to kill the Sun King. After the Shadow Society, under the direction of La Voisin, killed the Sun King, Paris goes through a political upheaval, a coup d'etat, where the Shadow Society takes over and takes control of the city. Mirabelle then realizes that her mother's Shadow Society is a lot more evil and not at all concerned about protecting the poor. Mirabelle is distraught and ridden with guilt about the fact that she brewed the poison that actually killed the king. She runs away and tries to brew curatives to assuage her guilt. Enter Jos, a mere kitchen staff who's extremely fond of his half royal sisters. After the death of the Sun King, Jos helps his sisters and his half brother, the Dauphin, the heir of the Sun King, escape the castle and promises to protect them. An unlikely duo, Jos and Mirabelle, meet, kind of fall in love or not fall in love, I'm not sure, fall in love, and take down the Shadow Society by uniting the poor and the royals. Wow. I'm going to let you figure out the rest on your own. So let me get back to what works and does not work for this book. First of all, this book allows its readers to learn about one of the darkest histories of France, that too with a woman at its helm. The real affair of the poisons is the arrest of La Voisin, or the Duchess among witches, and the revelation of an entire network of alchemists and their execution in the 17th century by King Louis XIV. La Voisin was a notorious woman and not at all like what Mirabelle assumes her to be. If you Google her, you'll find some real dark stuff about her in the internet. She was clearly not working on providing cure for the benefit of the people, like the shadow societies portrayed in the book. She was known to be a fortune teller, but also dabbed in brewing potions, aphrodisiacs, and medicines that assisted in abortions. She was also known to hold black masses, wherein one prays to Satan instead of God. It is rumored that it involves killing of babies and children. I'm not really sure of the entire detail, but it's gory as hell. Here is an image of her surrounded by a winged devil. Anyway, La Voisin was debatably one of the greatest sorceresses in the world and catered to a lot of members in the royal family. On the request of one of her clients, Madame de Montespan, she was a mistress of the Sun King, she attempted to kill Louis XIV but was unsuccessful. She was arrested before she attempted it again. And this is the event that the book reverses by making La Voisin successful in killing the king and taking over the city. The book definitely pushed me to look up and read a little bit more about this powerful woman. She also pops up as a misandrist, a woman who hates men, when you dig deep enough. The history here is fascinating, not just because it shows you the extensive use of potions and rituals in the 17th century France, but also highlights a woman villain. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but that's quite uncommon. The second thing that I liked about this book was the fact that it had a female protagonist, and she's a chemist. I always appreciate having women protagonists in children's novels, especially when they're also gifted and talented in areas that are normally male dominated, like the sciences. Generally, children's books with strong female protagonists are actually extremely smart and exceptionally talented. They may also be whimsical, kind of a rule breaker, and non-stereotypical. However, I only know of a few that actually excel in science and math. Yeah, here are some examples. This is Emma Greystone from Greystone Secrets 1, The Strangers. Emma is actually a math whiz who calculates an explanation for 3 missing children in the book. The second one is actually a picture book titled Rosie Reverie, Engineer. She loves to build machines. Of course, the list would not be complete without Hermione Granger, who's practically a genius at everything. All of them, including Mirabelle in An Affair of Poisons, use knowledge and skill to fight back or solve mysteries. So if the biggest reason that you picked up this book is because it has a female scientist, check out these two. The book is also a defining children's book. It has 2 characters who are going through personal change, and they're able to go through that change because of the agency that is provided to them because their parents are either dead or choose not to associate with them. This is a classic children's literature trait where parents and adults move out of the picture so that the child has more agency to grow and change. Classic examples include Wizard of Oz, where the main character is flown away in a hurricane into another magical world. Harry Potter, where Harry's parents die when he was 1 year old. And Pippi Longstocking, who lives all by herself in a house and her parents are a mystery. I'm not sure if I love this aspect of the book, especially because we are slowly moving away from this concept, but it is definitely familiar and it makes it easier for the reader. So, like I said, there are things that I appreciate about An Affair of Poisons. In fact, some of you might actually find it quite entertaining with all the action-packed scenes. However, there are parts of this book that I just find a little bit amateurish. Okay, so let's move on to things that did not work for this book. I'm specifically going to be talking about the literary devices that Addie Thorley has used. And also, I will be looking into how well an affair of poisons fit into the genre of fantasy slash alternate history. One of the most prominent literary devices that Addie Thorley is using in this book is an alternating point of view or alternating POV. Alternating POVs are actually becoming quite common in contemporary novels, especially YA novels. They're mostly used to help readers understand the personal struggle and motivation of two characters at the same time, and therefore is quite a handy tool for love stories where you learn what the characters are going through as they fall in love. Alternating POVs are also used when you have contrasting perspectives, like in a thriller book wherein the POVs alternate between the criminal and the police, for instance. However, in An Affair of Poisons, the two main characters, Mirabelle and Joss, are actually having very similar struggles. Both of them struggle with being accepted by their parents, and both of them are trying to figure out what they contribute to the world outside of the shadow of their parents. Both of them are love and acceptance starved, and therefore an alternating POV isn't necessarily adding another layer of complexity and struggle to the story. The only interesting part is when Joss realizes that he has been too arrogant to see that his father and his half-brother appreciate him. And while one might argue that Mira and Joss fall in love at the end, and therefore it's a love story, we know that An Affair of Poisons is actually not a love story. It's a story about a revolution. Secondly, one of the principal ideas of alternating POV is that alternating POV is generally for characters that actually have a growth arc. Mirabelle is quite a flat character, and despite the knowledge and agency she has, she seems to mess up more than actually contribute to the development of the book. If you were to compare the character arcs of Joss with Mirabelle, it would look like this. As you can see, Joss is happy being the kitchen help despite being the Sun King's bastard son. He loves his little half-sisters, Anne and Francoise. I think I'm pronouncing that right. The Sun King is killed by poison. Joss escapes with his half-siblings. Joss learns that his royal sisters are sick and gets Mirabelle to cure them. Plans to take down the Shadow Society with the help of Mirabelle and by uniting the royals and the poor. This is when the character reaches its climax. Joss learns that the Dauphin, even the Sun King, always believed that he was highly capable. However, he pushed them away, assuming that they would not want to associate with him because he is not a legitimate heir to the throne. And here you can see that Joss has come back to a status quo. Joss learns to trust the Dauphin and his skills and give up control. As you can see, Joss's character arc is moving upward to show growth. He starts off with no agency and trust, but ends up learning what he's capable of and trusting his half-brother, the Dauphin, to do the right thing. He learns that a lot of assumptions he made about his sibling royal half-brother was wrong. On the other hand, let's look at Mirabelle's arc. Mirabelle starts off as an alchemist for the Shadow Society led by her mother. The Sun King dies of poison. Mirabelle realizes that the poison she brewed killed the King of France. She feels guilty. Slowly realizes that the Shadow Society is not about helping people. Her mother's intentions are evil. Tries to assuage her guilt by brewing curatives for the poor and by saving Joss's friends and royal sisters. She helps Joss with his plans, but the plan fails and leads to more people dying. When arrested, she ends up giving the Shadow Society the location of the Dauphin and the royal sisters. Joss feels betrayed and Mirabelle is feeling guilty again. The Dauphin, along with the street kids and the fisher folk, save the day and destroy Shadow Society. Status quo is restored in the city. Mirabelle goes back to brewing curatives. The character arc is flat because Mirabelle does not necessarily grow as a person through the entire journey. She realizes that the Shadow Society is up to no good and tries to assuage her own guilt. Considering this very important detail, does it make sense that 50% of the book is dedicated to Mirabelle and her thoughts? I think it might have been better if the alternating POV is given to other interesting characters in the book, including the Dauphin himself, who kind of surprised me at the end of the book, or Gabriel, the street kid who helps take down the dragon, or Emmeline, the fisherman's wife. Finally, when employing alternating POVs, it is important to give the characters their own distinct voice. Somehow, the tone, the language of the chapters that alternate between Joss and Mirabelle, they are way too similar. Let's look at an example. Okay, I'm just going to give you a minute to read all the quotes on the screen. The quote on the left is taken from a chapter with Mirabelle's point of view, and the quotes on the right is taken from are taken from chapters with Joss's point of view. As you can see, both writing pieces appeal to sensory details. Cool tendrils of fear trickle down my neck, and blood dripping from my hands, wall of ravenous flame. Also, both pieces of writing use idioms. Bolt upright and scramble to my feet. The point I'm trying to make here is that the writing style, language, and tone is too similar between the two alternating POVs, and that does not allow the characters to have their own distinct voice. This reduces the overall effectiveness of using alternating POVs in a novel. Okay, so that is my criticism of using alternating point of views in An Affair of Poison. Let me go on to my next major criticism, which is that the book is force-fitting the fantasy element. So I'm going to start by looking at a definition of what the fantasy genre is. And I know the literature geeks out there, you're not going to be happy that I'm defining it with one definition. I understand that, but just stick with me here. This is how Frank Weinreich would define fantasy. Fantasy is a story, movie, game, or piece of art which incorporates supernatural phenomena as an important part of its content, which can assume different roles, but without which it would not function. And that the last part is the most important bit. There are elements of magic, potions, and dragons in An Affair of Poisons, but I can see that the story would work even without the use of these supernatural elements. Also, the use of dragons to turn something into fantasy is not, well, for the lack of a better word, imaginative. Dragons are normally associated with strong, intelligent creatures, not something that can be easily manipulated by blood. One of the creatures that I always associate with Europe, perhaps because of my own travel experiences, are gargoyles. When I visited Prague a couple of years ago, I found that the city is covered with gargoyle statues everywhere. Here's a picture that I took while I was visiting the St. Vitus Cathedral in Prague. It really seems like something that might come alive in the night. Anyway, my point isn't that dragons need to be replaced by gargoyles here, but that the supernatural element could have been an extension of the time, space, and setting. The use of dragons seemed a little misplaced, a little anachronistic. This discord in the book also made it slightly less appealing to me. Overall, this is an interesting read because of the historical event that this book is based on. However, the writing style and the alignment to the genre could have been much, much better. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to Let's Talk Children's Lit.